make sure you speak into the mic. And then outside of that, like I said, I want to have a just basic conversation with you, talk about some real estate points that are relevant to this particular market.
Okay.
And then a thing that I kind of touch on a little bit is, a lot of I'm the type of person that kind of feels like there's enough business out there,
Me too. Mm-hmm.
And so in addition to talking a little bit about real estate and buyers and our experience with them, I also want to talk a little bit about how you're obtaining business, maybe some of the, nuggets, if you will, that you're doing that's kind of making you successful. So we'll start from the top. Why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll roll it from there.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kathy Armstrong with the Madrina Home Team, brokered by Keller Williams. I am a real estate residential agent in the greater Austin area, although I will say I go all the way up to Bell County.
Okay.
And I have done things in South Austin, too, all the way down to Wimberley, so kind of cover the whole area.
Right on. How long have you been an agent again?
I've been an agent since 2014.
Okay.
So...
Yeah,
it will be
almost
9
a
years
decade.
this far. Yeah.
So you've seen some things.
I have seen some things, which I think makes an agent a really good agent because you tuck all those things away. No two transactions are exactly the same, but you may have a situation that's very similar that comes up,
Sure.
second time.
They're like snowflakes.
They are.
Well, I say that. It's actually one of the clips that we did where, one of the things that people always ask is, what do you think makes for a really good real estate agent or lender or anyone? And I always say that, 80% of this business can be learned in probably a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other 20%, you'll never learn it all because
And
it's ever changing.
That's what keeps me interested is
Sure.
because I love learning new things all the time, and I like puzzles.
Okay.
And to me, like every transaction sort of is a puzzle, like which piece has to fit in here and what piece has to fit here. And how do I get my client the best lending for that process? And how do I get my client the best terms? And, it's just
Sure.
it's kind of fun. It's fun to put all those pieces together.
I like that you called it a puzzle. I'll agree. I mean, some of my buyers, I do feel like, boy, is it just a puzzle.
It can be.
Yeah.
And it's fun when you figure out how to make the pieces fit and all comes together and boom, they get what they want.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, we kind of covered a little bit about what it is you do and how long you've been doing it. One of the things I immediately jump into, because, this is basically designed to, what I've recognized is a lot of buyers, they do a lot of research about us that we don't know.
Right.
And at the end of the day, although it might be best practices to reach out to a lender or a real estate agent and ask the questions that you have, sometimes people are shy or, who knows what it is, but they really want to take to the internet and do a little bit of research and maybe get some of those questions answered that, they should probably ask directly but don't want to.
Sure.
So I start off with kind of pain points. What are some of the pain points? And let's try to keep it as relevant to the market right now. What are some of the pain points that you're seeing currently that you're running into with some of your buyers or sellers that if you could just do like a public service announcement and say, hey, here's what I'm seeing and here's what you need to do?
Sure. So I think the first thing is making the assumption that prices are going to continue to go down in the Austin market.
Okay.
So I really think we've seen the price adjustment that we're going to see at this point. And so I sometimes work with buyers who think that they are going to get just this great deal because of, interest rates and all the things that have forced the market to slow up a little bit. And what I'm really finding is that houses are still going in multiple offers.
Right.
It all depends on if the agent has priced it right. So that's the other piece to my sellers.
Okay.
I always want to say to them, it's not the time for you to ask for what you could have gotten 2 years ago. Like you can't just have it all. And at the same time, it is still a seller's market.
Right.
And so what the trick is to get it priced just right so that we get multiple offers on the property. And I've been really pleased with that this year, just kind of for those who choose to accept it. And there are a couple listings that are out there floating right now that I didn't get because I wouldn't price it because I knew it would just sit there, and I'm not going to collect the listings. I'd like to sell them, and that is ultimately what the seller would like to do as well.
Gotcha. You mentioned multiple offers, and you're not the first agent I've had on here that's saying
Yep.
that they're seeing them. But for the average person out there, can you tell me a little bit about why multiple offers is important if you're selling your home?
The more people we can get that can get eyes on your property, the more interest we can generate. And then it becomes more like an auction in some ways, if I can use that as a analogy,
Sure.
where your house is desired.
Mm-hmm.
So for the other buyers who are looking at it, they realize they have competition in going to get it, and typically it drives the price up. Now, what that did during the pandemic was craziness. Like
Uh-huh.
we were talking, I think I had one, well, it doesn't matter, but over $100,000 over. I mean, almost close to
Oh,
two.
yeah, there's so many
I mean, it's
stories like
just
that.
like, yeah, so many people have that experience. And I thought I had priced it aggressively because
Mm-hmm.
I knew what the market was. But um, I think what that does, it's important to understand the process. It's important for your agent to go over with you the things that make your offer stand out.
Right.
So we kind of have developed, our team has developed kind of a formula
Okay.
that actually, I would say we probably got 85% of our offers accepted.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we're really good at writing a good, clean, compelling offer.
Yeah, what's that look like? What's the formula?
Um,
The secret sauce.
well, part of it is really good communication,
Okay.
which I feel like sometimes agents just write an offer and don't pick
Right.
up the phone and call the selling agent and
Mhm.
go, what does your client need?
Sure.
So during
Or what do they want?
what do they want? Yeah,
Mhm.
what's the number? My daughter bought a condo during this period of time, and she was at a very modest price point, let me say. And she was under contract on another condo. She went and saw one, and she's like, Mom, this is my house. So I literally picked up the phone and said to the agent, what do we need to do to take it off the market today? Just
Mhm.
tell me the number.
Sure.
I mean, I asked the question. And he went to his client. His client gave the number. We paid it. We appraised. She's in her condo.
Boom.
Yeah, and we canceled the other
Just
one.
like
So
that.
it's just it's a communication thing.
Yeah.
And then there are tricks like, do you really need a home warranty? Can I, as
Mhm.
an agent, buy you one of those so we don't have to put it in the contract? I mean, there are things we can get you pre-approved
Right.
all the way
Yep.
through underwriting so that your offer looks a lot more like cash and we're not sitting there with financing contingencies. So there are a lot of ways that we can get your offer accepted
Yeah.
in those chances.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the no contingencies. I mean, that's one of the big things that we do is the full underwrite, to compete with cash and everything along those lines. But the one thing you mentioned communication that is just shocking to me is that when I'm working with a team, obviously a real estate agent being one of those, um, I always let that agent know, please, CC me when the offer is sent. I reach out to the listing agent. I express the strength of the approval, let them know who I am, obviously do everything I can, to kind of what you said, ask like, hey, here's where our offer is. But a lot of times, one of the things that I see that a lot of people don't ask is about time. And what I mean by that is, I think when you're selling a home, when you really break it down to the core, if you're a seller, there's three things you care about, and really only three. And it's how much are you going to pay me for my house?
Yep.
What is the likelihood that this is actually going to happen?
Boop.
And how quickly
Can
can
we
you
get
make
it
it
done?
happen?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is really why, I mean, I'm commending you that you're doing these extra things because they all sound so simple, but they all stack up. Because I'm shocked when I reach out to a listing agent and I ultimately say what I just said, like, hey, the offer is what the
Mm-hmm.
clients have written. As far as speed is concerned, we can close in as quickly as 10 business days, right? So even if you have, this is something that I don't think a lot of buyers know, is even if you come to, even if you were to make an offer with a briefcase full of cash,
Mm-hmm.
it's still going to take about 10 days to close just because of title transfer.
That's right.
So when people are accepting cash offers over fully financing, to me, as far as the time is concerned, no one should be concerned about that, because we're going to have your money just as quickly as you could if you have cash.
And it's the same money.
Right.
Cash
Yeah.
is the same money
Correct.
as financed offers.
Right.
So for me, I'm with you as well. If you have a fully, like through underwriting approval that you're good to go, there's no reason
Yeah,
as
we've
a
already done
seller to pay.
everything.
Yeah. That's right. You're 100% right.
And then the thing that's shocking to me, and then again, we're talking about the communication and just the simple things, is I am mind blown by, the amount of real estate agents that I'll talk to on the listing side. They'll say, yeah, we're in multiple offers. And I'll ask, hey, has any other lender connected with you yet? And they're like, no, not one. I'm going to call a few of them, but nobody has contacted me immediately. And that's awesome. And so naturally I say, well, wouldn't that be fantastic if you were on the buy side and you had that kind of power?
Yeah, it is. It's lovely. I have a couple lender. I
Right.
mean, I think that's great.
Yeah, of course.
That's what we want to do. We need to have you advocating for our buyers like
course.
that because it makes all the difference in the world. If I can talk and connect with a lender,
Sure.
I I'm the agent that calls everybody to make sure that people really are pre-approved and that it's good to go. And recently I had a buyer on one of my properties and I knew the lender that this buyer
Mhm.
was using. And of course, he called me and then it didn't appraise,
Mhm.
which was really rough. But because
Yeah.
of that relationship and my conversation with him, I knew that the family was still going to be able to close.
Gotcha.
And so I knew that going in.
Mhm.
And that was a really helpful piece of information
Sure.
as the listing agent for
Yeah.
me to know, because then I could confidently say to my folks, "Don't worry, we're going to get there."
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean the whole communication and doing that, and like I said, reaching out to the listing agent, all of that stuff. It is kind of crazy how many people aren't doing it, but I swear it is just that little,
magic.
right, and
It is.
and even furthermore, one of the things that I think is important that we did get away from, and I'm so happy that, here we are sitting in a room and we're able to do these things, but I've been saying to real estate agents, and this is actually a topic I haven't even brought up in a podcast that just kind of hit me, is when I got into this industry. Well, let me start here. There's a lot of real estate agents that pretty much may have started a year or two before COVID and then till now.
Hmm.
So if you've been in the business maybe 5 years or less, you don't remember the days of how important it was to do the events, the ABOR events, and for real estate agents to get together. Because I've talked to a lot of newer agents that say things like, I don't really understand or see the value in connecting with real estate agents. They're my competition. I don't get business from them, and it's kind of a waste of my time. They don't say that directly, but that's kind of the sentiment that I hear when I, do things like Austin Real Estate Professionals or ABOR and things like that. And one of the things that I really feel like we got away from during COVID, for obvious reasons, was doing those events. And what I recognized were real estate transactions started to get a little more just disconnected. It almost felt like, the listing agent and the buyer's agent, like it's a boxing ring and we're gonna fight
Hmm.
this out.
Hmm.
And I think it's just really important to, you said, communicate, obviously have your lender doing those things, but also one of the things that I've always been big on is connecting with other agents because of exactly what you just said. When the listing agent knows the buyer's agent, and they both know the lender and the title company and everything like that, when a problem arises, I've seen it two different ways. It's either a fully unified team of individuals that know each other and they're like, how do we get the deal done? And then there's the other one, well, your appraiser appraised this for less. And it's like, well, you're going to do this and this is going to go this way. And it's like, guys, let's not forget what we're trying to do here. We're trying to create a good experience for our clients and we're trying to get the deal done. We got to all be on the same team.
We are all on the same team, and that's just what I was going to say.
Right.
And somebody said that to me in the beginning, and it really stuck with me. And one of the things that I think we at the Madrina team pride ourselves on is
Mhm.
we're not transactional agents, we're relational agents. So, and we certainly can get the transaction done, but the process is as important as the outcome.
Mhm.
Because sometimes, I don't know if you've seen these kind of transactions where at the end of it, you just want to run screaming, clients, me, everybody. And that's just not the way to do business.
No.
And it often starts with our lack of knowing other people.
Mhm.
One of the things I always tell new agents when they first get their license is literally don't go with a remote brokerage where you don't
Yeah.
have an office. Like, go somewhere and show up, put it on your calendar, treat it like another job. Show up at 9 in the morning, stay till 1 or 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
listen to the conversations, make friends. It is so nice for me to see someone I know on the other side of a deal because I know who they are already as a person.
Yep.
I know the level of integrity they have. I know all of those kind of things. And it makes it so much easier to work together to get us across the board.
Well, and let's face it, it's gonna increase the chances of your buyer going under contract, which at the end of the day, one of the things that you will constantly hear from any real estate agent, whether they mean it or not, is my number one priority is my buyer or my seller, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if that truly is the case, then first and foremost, you're going to want to make sure that they have a good experience.
Yep.
And even if you're advocating for them in a positive way because there is, for lack of a better term, an issue,
Yes.
the way that you're going about it, if you're creating stress and anxiety, like, yeah, I'm fighting for you. Like, I'm not saying that, we don't fight for our buyers, but like, I don't know if fight is the word that I would choose to use, because I'll tell you, I've dealt with some agents where it sure as heck feels like a fight.
Yeah. And I don't think, maybe it's advocate, but
Much better.
And I think
choice of
the
words.
other thing about it is educate.
Uh-huh.
So one of the things that I find is that we get agitated when we don't understand something.
Mm-hmm.
So if something comes up in the transaction that looks like it's going to blow it up, well, let's find out. Let's pick it apart. Let's figure it out. And then I always struggle with, I'll just be honest, I always struggle with how much information is too much and how much information is enough, because
Agreed.
I don't want to raise undue anxiety for my client that's under contract, but at the same time I want them to be fully apprised of everything that's going on. So I really use it as an opportunity to educate and just to tell them, here's what's happening.
I've always jokingly had the analogy with our buyers and our sellers that, we've all seen like a 2 or 3 year old kid, and all of a sudden they fall and they kind of look at you, and if you act like, oh my gosh, you just fell, they just start wailing and crying. Where if you kind of look at them and go, you're fine, get up.
Yeah.
And there's no tears. And I feel like in real estate, there's a lot of those moments. And it's like you said, you don't want to, information overload and create anxiety. Sometimes when a buyer's like, I'm scared, you need to be like, you're fine.
Yeah.
Get back up.
Yeah, this is normal. This
Right.
is normal.
Yeah.
That's typically what I say. I've seen this a million times. This happens often. I'm not worried about it. I'm not going to lose any sleep over this tonight. Like, this is just part of the transaction. I'll never forget my first buyer. And it was a call to my office. So, I was on round robin, getting the phone, whatever. And they gave me this. And they did their inspection. And I was more nervous. They had bought several houses before. They didn't know I was a new agent. And I was so anxious about the inspection. Like, what if they find something drastically wrong? So anxious. And I think I said something like, I'm anxious about that. I think it just flew out.
Right.
He's like, what? I'm like, oh, it's all good. And I just learned my lesson. Like, my job in some ways as an agent is to handle their stress, to take as much off.
Totally.
It's a stressful process, but my job as an agent is to disarm it, educate around it, and carry any of it that I need to. So that was a really good learning experience for me.
I mean, one of the things you mentioned, stress, and one of the things that I have recognized by talking to buyers that I would love for you to just, kind of get out there that we can use as a soundbite, is I've talked to a lot of buyers that kind of don't understand what an option fee is.
Oh,
They feel like, when they are, and this is a good one to put online for the individuals that don't want to ask direct questions and kind of want to do a little bit of research, right? So I am here to tell you that there are buyers that feel like the moment that they sign a purchase contract and submit it to a listing agent, that like, that's it. They have just, signed their life away, and they have to buy this house if the sellers accept it. And, there's stress and anxiety in that. So I want to give you the floor to kind of explain what that looks like and why making an offer on a property doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to find yourself at a title company signing on something you don't want.
Yeah, Great question. So, one of the things that I love about the Texas contract, and every state has their own real estate contract, so it's not always the same. But here,
Originally from there.
yeah, from Ohio, and I just bought a house in Mississippi,
Oh,
and
no
there it
kidding.
was different than this too. My child goes to college there, so yeah, she needed a place to live. So
Okay.
that was an interesting process. But back to option period.
Yeah.
So I love that we have that. It's really a safety net for buyers in
Sure.
our contract. And you probably know this already, but there are a ton of ways for a buyer to get out of a contract.
Oh, yeah.
The option is just the first one. But what you are paying for is you are paying for the right to wake up in the morning and change your mind.
For what?
For no reason at all. There doesn't have to be a problem with the house. There doesn't have to. You could just wake up in the morning and go, yeah, not feeling it today.
Jesus spoke to me and told me not to buy this house.
Yeah, I've heard that one. So anyway, so that is what you're paying for the right to do. So whatever that option period, how many ever days, usually it's just several $100s. We're out of the craziness where you
Right.
have to give your firstborn child. You then have that house inspected. You see, so you know what you're getting. You negotiate any repairs during that period. And then if you decide to move on, that money that you put for the option period then goes towards the purchase of the house. So the only reason people talk about losing their option is that they paid for the right to terminate the contract, and that's what the money's for. So you're not losing anything.
Right.
You're exercising your right to get out of the contract.
Well, and the reason I brought it up is because in addition to telling the people out there and explaining that, I don't see this very often, but I see it more than I would like to admit, is we'll have an individual, because again, as a lender being very involved, I tell all of my buyers that are working with my real estate agents to make sure that when they find a house that they would consider actually making an offer on, let's run down the payment. Let's make sure you feel comfortable with it so that we don't get under contract and all of a sudden find out, oh my gosh, the taxes were higher than we thought or whatever. So when I get that call, we run everything down and everything kind of connects with what the buyer wants. And I've seen buyers kind of go, all right, we're going to go ahead and take a little bit of time to think about it. Right. And I'm not saying that anybody should rush into purchasing a property. But the point I'm trying to make is it like we need to think about it because we're afraid to lose our couple $100? Think about it. Or we need to think about it because we just don't know if we really like this place. And so I guess what I'm driving at is, and I'll ask you just so that we can have, good content here. If somebody else's offer gets accepted and I put up that option money, am I required to pay the option money?
Yes.
No, somebody else's
Oh,
offer
somebody
gets accepted.
else.
So if there's a multiple
no,
offer
no,
situation,
no. Only the executed offer
Right.
has to pay.
So if there's
the
5
option
offers and
money.
I put in my offer and I'm going to say, hey, I need a 5-day option. I want 5 days to make sure that I feel good about this and I want to think about it. I'm going to put up $500 and my offer doesn't get accepted. Am I out any money?
None. Zero.
Right.
Zilch,
So
nada.
again,
Yeah.
this is kind of a public service announcement to buyers where write your offer. If you're thinking about it, is it like, I don't want to lose $500 to think about it? Because if that's the case, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're just not into the house.
Or you're just not into buying any house, period, because
That's
it
true.
is an investment,
Mm-hmm.
and it costs money, even
Right.
in the offer process. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I see buyers that wait a day or two, and then all of a sudden it's in multiple offer situations. And then at the end of the day, there's this like really discouraged attitude. And the only thing I can think is, why wouldn't you just put up a couple $100, write the offer, start the negotiating process? And, what transpired between the last 2 days that you were thinking about that wasn't worth putting up a couple $100 and
Yeah.
actually getting the process going?
Yeah. And I will say too, the other piece of that is that I often will say to my buyers, you know what? It's $200.
Yeah.
In the span of a lifetime, is this house worth you at least taking a chance on? And if they say no, then we just walk.
Right.
Then it's not worth the $200. But if it is, why wouldn't we move forward
Can't
and
even
put
get
the
a steak
offer
dinner
in?
for $200
You can't,
anymore.
not a decent one anyway,
Right.
right? So, yeah. So I'm very. One of the things I love about being an agent is that we work with all different kinds of people. And I think part of my job is figuring out how risk adverse, how open they are, what's the best way to move forward with them. I never want to manipulate anybody into doing anything. And at the same time, it's important for me to understand them in order for us to communicate. I have some people who are very detail oriented, and before they can move forward, we have to do all of the details. They want to see everything from the survey to they're going to read every line of the contract. One of my very first clients taught me that, and I will never forget. I was like, he asked me a question about the contract, and I was like, let me get back to you.
Sure.
I was new.
Yeah.
And he said, okay. And he's still a client to this day. He still does transactions with me.
That's awesome.
And because it was just honest. But he needs to know everything. He needed to know every small detail. And then you have clients who are like, just send it over. I'll sign it. And you're like, read it. It's contractually, it's a binding contract.
Right.
So it's important in the process to figure out who they are, what works best for them, how much information is enough and how much is too much. And that part of it is the part of the fascinating puzzle for me as well. And option period is just one example of how we see that played out, right?
Well, and you mentioned education, right? I mean, you said part of your job is to educate buyers. And I'll be completely honest, I think that option period is one of those things that it's not complicated.
No.
And so when things aren't complicated, when people don't fully understand them, they're afraid to ask.
Ah, yeah.
Right?
That makes sense.
And it's like, because they are almost thinking, okay, I kind of have my head wrapped around this, but it seems simple, or at least my agent or my lender is making it seem simple, but I'm not fully grasping it. And I'm going to just kind of go with the flow, because if I question it, I'm going to feel like I'm stupid. Right.
And so I need to come with there's no stupid questions in real estate, right?
No,
exactly. Because that's important.
Well, and this is something that I talk about with a lot of agents and a lot of other lenders and title companies, is that I use the analogy of auto repair. Okay. Like, any individual has no problem standing in front of a crowd or at a dinner or anything along those lines and saying, you know what, I don't know a thing about a car. I can't even change a tire, and for whatever reason, that is something that is socially acceptable. It's okay to not know anything about how to, or I even know, people that are like, I'm not tech savvy. I don't really deal with computers, and there's no like shame in that. But for some reason, if somebody were to speak up and say, I don't understand financing or real estate or any of it, it's all just a foreign language to me.
Yeah.
There's always a group of people that are just like, who's this guy? Because I don't know why, and maybe you can answer this question. Why is it that real estate seems to be something that, regardless of your experience level, everybody knows something or even thinks they know everything about? Why is that?
You got me. I mean, seriously,
Really?
I think it's because we all live in houses. I don't know. I mean, really, it's just this weird. Well, my Uncle Joe said that the market in Austin is. I'm like,
and Uncle Joe is like, he works as a tech engineer.
Yeah, in Michigan or
Right.
something ridiculous. And I'm like, does Uncle Joe have access to the MLS in
Right.
Austin so that he can see what those stats are and how the market's moving? Or my father says, never buy a house that has X, or Y or whatever. It's just it's very interesting. And then it's important that they trust us. So, I think that's the other thing is like when you choose an agent, please choose someone you trust.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And with integrity, because I see some things in real estate, and realtors historically, did some pretty dicey things.
Yeah.
So, but we have laws now to protect us. So make sure that those laws are being followed. I got a call from a client whose dad said he hadn't signed any paperwork, and the agent that was going to sell his house was doing it for nothing. And there was a sign in the yard, but the father insisted he had not signed anything. And I got a call from the daughter just in a panic. And I'm like, yeah, you probably need to insert yourself in that. I can't. but you probably need to make sure
Right.
that there's some listing paperwork that has been signed to protect your dad.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So interesting. It still happens. That
Well,
was, yeah.
I ask almost every agent that comes on here that question, and yeah, I don't know what it is
Yeah.
that, and the only answer that I've gotten that is close to something that I'm like, okay, I think you're onto something, and even this is a stretch because, well, like any business, there's a lot of good agents and there's also a lot of really bad ones.
Yeah.
But I had a real estate agent say to me, I think the reason that everybody and their brother acts as though they know everything about real estate is because good real estate agents do a fantastic job of making the process seem so easy.
Ah,
And
that's
because it
interesting.
appears so easy that everybody thinks that they can do it, right? Because let's face it, this isn't coming from me, but the general public thinks all you do is open doors and, kind of throw a dart at a dartboard on what you think a house is worth. And we all know that that's not true, but I'll look at it from a positive light and say maybe there's a little bit to it when if real estate agents are doing such a good job that the general public, who obviously doesn't see how the sausage is made, um, we just make it look seamless.
And I think that's probably accurate at some
Hmm.
level. I remember when I first got my license, and my mom said to me about a year and a half in, she goes, I had no idea. And she said, I just thought realtors just,
Open
they
doors
didn't
and
really do much. And she goes, I have never seen anybody work so hard.
yeah.
And I think a lot of it is because we don't show it.
Hmm.
Like we're like the duck. We look calm on the surface and our feet are doing this all the time.
Right.
Like we're putting together all the little details behind the scenes. And actually, that's what a good realtor does.
I
So
agree.
that it just to lessen the stress on the client.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, moving on to another quick topic. I mean, I always give the opportunity, and if you don't have any, that is completely fine. But
Yeah.
everyone asks me, hey, what do I need to do to prepare? And I'm like, just come in. We're going to chat about the market. If you don't
Yeah.
know the answers, that's a problem. You're so obviously
Yeah.
you've been able to answer all of these. You're answering them daily. But
Yeah.
are there any questions you have for a lender in general that you thought about on the way here?
That's great. So, I would love to know a little bit about what kind of your areas of expertise
Sure.
are as a lender and what you feel like your superpower is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll start with the superpower. We kind of already touched on it. I really, really, I really, really believe, and I can say firsthand that I know the power of connecting locally, being a local agent,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing real estate agents. Obviously, we're doing this podcast. I'm getting to know you. I'm at the events. I'm doing all of the things because when we have a buyer, at the end of the day, when we break it down, all we really want is for our buyer to find a home, fall in love with it, and get it. And
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing more heartbreaking than having a buyer look at 5, 10, 20 homes, however many. They finally find a place and someone else ends up getting that home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even for buyers out there who think, oh, it's not that big of a deal, like it is heartbreaking. I've watched tough men and women that are like, oh, yeah, whatever. And they lose that first, offer that they make and it kills them, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
doing all of the things to increase the possibility of a buyer going under contract is huge. And so, of course, if you truly are paying cash, you don't need me.
Right.
But if there's any financing involved, whether you work with me or any other lender, you have to have a lender in your corner that is 100% doing the things like you mentioned, underwriting the loan completely, getting in contact with the listing agent, and then like I said, does that lender know the listing agent? And if not, we all have social media. I promise you that there is not a real estate agent in the Austin area that I can't find somebody that I know
That
knows
knows
that
them.
agent.
Mm-hmm.
And all it is 2 phone calls where it's like, hey, I'm going to drop your name to so and so. And when I do that, it is going to increase the possibility of your buyer going under contract. And the last thing that we didn't touch on, I have talked to a ton of very well-to-do buyers, 800 credit scores, big down payments, great jobs, salaried positions, bought multiple homes. And sometimes those buyers come with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder when it comes to financing. We're like, look, buddy, if I find a house, I'm going to get it. But the problem is, and this is something that I don't think people think about. You know you're good to go. You can potentially convince your buyer's agent that you're good to go.
Right.
And maybe your buyer's agent can convince the listing agent that you're good to go. But the truth is nobody has seen your credit. Nobody has seen your down payment amounts. Nobody has seen any of that information but your lender. And so if you have a local lender that's doing purchase business on a local level, reputation is everything.
Yes.
And the last thing that a lender is going to do is mislead any listing agent or anything along those lines with a buyer and lie and say, oh, they're totally good to go. And the listing agent knows that. Mm-hmm. And so when a lender is coming in and really going to bat for a buyer, it's huge because I'm here to tell you, I get to see everybody's finances, and before credit is pulled and before, really all the truth comes out, 9 out of 10 of my buyers claim that they have amazing credit, they have awesome income, they've got tons of assets. Nobody makes an offer on a property and says, hey, here's my offer. Oh, and by the way, not sure if the financing is going to work out. That never happens. Well, so as a listing agent, when you hear from a buyer's agent, my clients are good to go, when in the world is a buyer's agent ever going to write an offer and say, I don't know if this is going to be a good one. I'm pretty sure they don't make enough money. That never happens.
Nope.
So you can be the best buyer ever, but because of all of the bad experiences that every listing agent, if you've been in this business long enough, you've had a deal fall through due to financing,
mm-hmm.
No one believes you. No one believes you because there's bad guys out there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So this is the public service announcement to the 800 credit score guy, the guy who calls me and the first sentence out of his mouth is, I could buy this house in cash, but I want to leave it in the stock market. But I just want to let you know, I don't need your money. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
I believe you. I've seen it, but no one else is going to believe you. No one. But when I say it, it means something. And you've got to have a lender that's doing that in this market.
You do. And it really is an advantage because you would be surprised as a listing agent how many offers I get from without even a lending letter and or from a non-local lender, which I feel like is important. Like, I want to know where you are so that I can come and find you if I need to you and go, what is going on? Or that we have that relationship where you are going to be open and forthright with me regarding that stuff because you're an important piece of the transaction, part of the puzzle. So.
Well, yeah, because that lender in Omaha, Nebraska that's sitting in a call center that reached out to you because you put some information online, he has zero regard for his reputation here in Austin. So if something falls through, what does he care?
He doesn't have a relationship with you as a buyer. Well,
that's true.
He gets paid on you closing. It's very transactional, but it's not typically my lenders care about what happens to their clients.
Right.
And that to me is why I feel like realtors and lenders that don't go on, not that we can't do part of our job online, but that we aren't an online way of doing business will survive as we continue to become more automated and that kind of thing, because there are things sometimes that happen in real estate transactions that only a human can solve.
Sure.
It doesn't happen often enough that it can be built into the algorithm that goes on the computer. I can think of several right now that it took a human being to look at all the data, make the phone calls, and put it all together.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like it's that relational aspect of a local lender as well. Yeah.
Well, and so to wrap it up with a little bow, that is my superpower, is that I get very involved in the negotiating process. I'm not negotiating the drapes and the curtains and the flooring, but I'm negotiating the strength of your financing, and it is huge. As you put it, 85% is actually pretty high. I've been tracking this over the last 6 years now. I call it acceptance ratio. I made up the term, and I ask agents a lot of
Yeah.
times when I sit with them, what's your acceptance ratio? I'd say 50% of agents have an answer for me. The other 50 don't have any idea. They've never even thought about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so most agents that I sit with, I kind of say, well, let me explain it to you. If you wrote 10 offers on 10 different homes with 10 different buyers, how many of them would go under contract? And most agents will tell me about 50 to 60%.
Mm.
And that seems to be kind of the normal answer. And the agents that we track, I have, agents that I've been working with for quite some time. My best agent is actually still in Ohio. We're at about an 80% acceptance ratio. So to hear that you're at 85, and for the record, the fact that you're even tracking that is awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to get into that like high 70, 80% range, I mean, envision that as a buyer's agent. But more importantly, envision how awesome that is to be, the buyer, right? To be
Mm-hmm.
working with somebody and saying, hey, I've written these offers and everything along those lines, and I can't seem to get anything under contract. But there's someone over here that's giving you an 80% chance that you will.
Yeah. Yep. That knows how to write an offer to get it
Oh, it's huge.
accepted. Yeah, it is huge. And we worked really hard during the pandemic because there was just, and I feel like we just really were knocking the ball out of the park, and we still are.
Yeah.
I had 5 buyers at the beginning of last year that were 250 or 350 and under.
Okay.
4 of the 5 under contract within a month.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's a low price point.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's
I know what you mean.
really hard. So that was a hard one for me. So that would only be 80%. But
Mhm.
those weren't all my clients. But I just remember like I had a couple months where slug that one out.
Yeah.
And they're all it's wonderful. I'm working right now with one of their friends who was referred to me that's moving to this area. So
I gotcha.
it's fun. Yeah.
Well, just to pivot, because I want to keep the topics flowing. I mean, one of the things I mentioned before we sat down is, trying to stay away from a scarcity mindset. And you've kind of already
Yes.
given us some of your secrets. But I want to talk about, ways in terms of generating new business, because it's no secret, things are not as busy as they were a year or two ago.
Right.
And you've got agents that are newer, and even some agents who've been in the market for quite some time who are, not doing the numbers that they were doing before.
Mhm.
And I think that, new business, or how do you, obtaining new business is something that people are starting to recognize is a little more difficult than they thought. So I'll kind of leave it to you, and what are some of the things that you're seeing other agents doing, or that you're doing yourself, that is really working in this market to generate new business, whether it's listings or buyers?
So I think real estate is a long game, not only for the person who is investing in real estate,
Yep.
but also for an agent.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have been finding and what I'm beginning to see for me is it was slow for a little bit, but now I'm starting to see things pop again because the market is picking back up.
Mm-hmm.
But where I'm seeing my growth is in repeat
Okay.
clients and then referrals from those clients. So what we're doing is we're just trying to keep in touch
Yeah.
with our sphere. I mean, this is just all like real estate 101. Keep in touch with our sphere, let them know we're thinking about them. If we see something that comes across the market and it looks like something they might even they've let me know they love craftsman style homes. So I might just send it and say, hey, I saw this and thought of you today.
Yep.
It's just a top of mind, reaching out, being there. I like to be really involved in networking
Uh-huh.
and also in my community. Like I show up at things, I put myself out there. I have some great networking partners. That has been one of my greatest things.
Okay.
I feel like I have been able to help people and their family. It's not always a one-to-one. Like, oh, I'm in networking with you. Next time you buy a house, I expect you to use me. It's
Right.
not that at all. It's really who the people I'm in networking know.
Yeah.
And who they might think a client that might work well with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the agent for every buyer or seller.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, I am all about there's enough business to go around. I think it's important for us to be generous with our time, with what we know, and just put ourselves out there.
Sure.
And then the other thing for me is I know you said earlier, talking about agents thinking that we're in competition with one another. I don't really look at us in competition.
Right. No, I don't
And
think it should be that way.
no, it shouldn't be that way. And the reality is I have gotten deals from other people who are like, for whatever reason, this is not working. I think that you'd be a better fit with them. Let me throw them your way. Or, so there are a lot of ways to approach business. And I am always looking for the most relational of what those ways are.
Sure.
Because that's the piece that appeals to me. Like, I love sitting here with you today.
Yeah.
This to me is networking.
Of course.
And then I'm like, okay, so who do I need to send your way?
Yeah.
And then it's great.
Well, and so just to touch a little bit further on, you mentioned, sphere of influence, reaching out, and you're saying you're getting stuff from past clients. And one of the things that I'm kind of basically steering you into, but I've run into this a lot with agents. Is it safe to say that when you're talking to past clients and getting these referrals, are you asking for the business?
Sometimes I am.
Okay.
Yeah, but not always.
Okay.
Sometimes it's truly relational.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes a question. So the other day I ran into someone, and she has not done business with me, but I know she wants to buy in Georgetown and Old Town.
Okay.
And we had a chat, talk about that and that kind of thing. She has used another agent in town, so I just, kind of hang back a little bit. And but we had this really lovely conversation, and when we got done, she sent me a house that's not on the market that she loves and wants to figure out how to get. So my job is to figure out how to get her in that house.
Of course.
Which that's just relational. If I never do it or nothing ever turns over, that's okay too. But that's why I'm saying it's the long run, like long term. Like, how do I keep my eyes open for people long term?
Sure. No,
yeah.
you're fine.
So, anyway.
So, yeah, I mean, we talked about the past clients and then the referrals coming from them. And I think one of the things you mentioned, networking, you mentioned, doing kind of events and things of that nature. Just to sum it all up, and I'm enjoying this conversation because here we're talking about things that seem so simple, but it's pretty shocking the amount of things that we're mentioning that people aren't doing because they think, oh, that's not innovative. It's not this new AI or this new drip campaign with my CRM. And this podcast is an example of how one of the things that I think is more important now than ever that I'm just not seeing as much of is you've got to be out there because you need to be top of mind and you need to be known, right? I mean, you can be the best real estate agent ever, know how to negotiate, know how to write up a contract, have your client's best interest in mind, all of the things that any other real estate agent would say, but how do you as a real estate agent generate new business? And so step number one is just being out there, being known. And it sounds so simple, but yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think, we do some social media as well.
Well, this will be out there for you. We're going to put together a bunch of
it.
clips and get this out, and you'll have lots of stuff to share. But I heard a statistic the other day, and I want your take on it. So traditionally in, an average real estate market, about 15 to 17% of all purchases annually are new builds. And right now, they're saying that is approaching almost 30% of all purchases in this current market are new builds. And so that is, a fact. There's, it is what it is, right? And that's the market that we have. And this is a nationwide statistic. And I feel like here in Austin, we're seeing maybe even
higher.
a little more than that, right?
Yeah.
So as a real estate agent, one of the things that I've been asking agents is, if I'm looking to purchase a new build, number one, do I even need a real estate agent? And number two, if so, why? Because when I walked into the spec home, the woman who I talked to was more than willing to work out a contract and everything along those lines. And I know at the end of the day, a real estate agent is going to get paid. So if I can just cut that real estate agent out of the contract, does that mean I'm going to get a great deal?
No.
Oh, well, that was direct. Good. Okay.
Yeah,
Why?
So I think that you are selling yourself short by not using an agent because you don't have anyone looking out for your best interests. Now, One of the things about a builder is they are going to come to you with a builder's contract. It's different than the one we would write for a resale house. It's really helpful for you to have someone who knows how to read a contract, not that you don't, but somebody else who's seen these contracts and had their eyes on them, read through it so that they can make you aware of anything that may be different in that contract than is not in the typical resale contract.
Right.